hippy dippy, a little bit trippy, but that's okay with me. 'Cause all I need to make me smile is a little incense and a tapestry. A little incense and a tapestry.
Hey everyone, it's Jonathan and welcome back to Every Virgin Ever. Today I'm joined once more by Jenna and Eli, and we're talking about an episode of the HBO animated anthology series from the 90s, Happily Ever After, Fairy Tales for Every Child. Like the previous episode on Shelley Duvall's series, this is another show that I've had in mind for ages as a series to look at for podcast content. This show lasted for 3 seasons and 39 episodes, and they covered all kinds of fairy tales, from the well-known to obscure, and from what I can tell, they usually tried to do some kind of creative twist on the story, like setting it in modern day, or in a different country, or gender-swapping the lead. Something unique to make it stand out from all the other times these stories had previously been adapted. Which brings us to today's episode on Rip Van Winkle. I originally found this one after my discussion with Jenna and Eli on last month's Tales of Washington Irving podcast. We thought it would be a really interesting twist on the story to tell it from Dame Van Winkle's perspective and see what she was going through, both during her time with Rip and his seemingly careless attitude, helping everyone but his own family, and then later during his disappearance and what she did when he was gone. On the off chance that we weren't the only people who had this same idea, I figured I'd search to see if someone out there had made something similar, and when I came across this episode, I knew we had to talk about it. From the description I found, I knew it was about Rip's wife, and followed her as she had to put up with his terrible attitude. Yes, it was in modern day, but I thought it sounded close enough to our idea that we should check it out. And it was not at all close to our idea. Yes, this story follows Dame Van Winkle, here renamed to Vanna Van, before she married Rip and took Winkle as her last name. But beyond that, aside from the fact that Rip falls asleep for half the story, this is almost closer to a gender-swapped version of Rip Van Winkle. Vanna's journey here is closer to Rip's from the book. It's almost like his character has been split in two and half the story was given to his wife. But even then, the story is still almost nothing like the book, and it also has a not even the least bit subtle feminist message that is so heavy-handed that at times it almost comes off as more of a parody making fun of feminism than it does a pro-feminist parable, let alone a fun animated cartoon for kids. Regardless of how we felt about this one, or how well executed the idea may or may not have been, as a concept, I have to admit it is technically the most unique and creative take on Rip Van Winkle that I've found so far. I kind of doubt there will be any to top it in the future.
'Cause all the worlds are beautiful, kaleidoscope of blue and
So this one I found because we were talking back when we recorded the Tales of Washington Irving, like it would be nice to have one from his wife's perspective. And I thought that that's what this was going to be. And it kind of was, but also it kind of was just its own story with only the bare minimum Rip Van Winkle content thrown in.
I'm just gonna say this was absolutely nuts. And
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, what am I was actually really confused for a while. I wrote in my notes, who's this hippy dippy lady? You know, like, is she Rip? And it's like, yes, but also no.
Yeah, it was such a bizarre take on the story. I was like, whose idea was this? Like, I would like to know the thought process behind turning Rip Van Winkle. Like, I can see how maybe they got there, sort of like our conversation, wanting to know her perspective, because, like, technically, Rip is not the greatest husband. He does more for everyone in town besides his wife. He kind of
Yeah, I kind
ignores
of feel like
her.
this could have been made up by someone who had the same thought process that I did, which was, wow, Rip kind of sucks as a partner
Yeah,
to go through life with. Like, wow, I feel bad for his wife.
but then they took that thought and then just, I don't know, they did their own thing with this. The whole opening song is Vanna Van is the main character of this. Her singing about being a hippie and all the stereotypical hippie stuff that she likes to do. And then there was a line, I make brown rice and brownies. And I was like, is this a weed joke?
Oh no, I didn't catch that.
I don't know if it was
That's
or
it.
not, but like that's always the joke with like hippies like weed and weed brownies. It's like, is this supposed to be a weed joke in this cartoon for children?
It is HBO.
But
That's true.
how much
Yeah.
for children is it really?
I don't know. Because I was watching, I was like, would a kid like this? I think I would have been
No.
kind of bored.
Oh, I would have been bored myself.
Yeah.
I kind of had high hopes for this series, and I plan to go back to it because they've done so many versions of famous fairy tales. But now I'm kind of wondering if this is going to be, if it's all just going to be weird takes on the stories and not that fun. Because I was hoping it was going to be fun, and I didn't have a whole lot of fun with this episode.
Uh, well, the whole thing I was watching it, and it felt like someone was challenging themselves to by like saying, uh, how can we take the story of Rip Van Winkle and make it a feminist anthem? Like that's what it felt like.
And
And
I did kind of know that going in, but I guess I didn't know how stereotypical and well, like the opening narration with the fighting narrators, with you have the male narrator talking about a kingdom far, far away, and a female narrator interrupts him and says, "Excuse me, why does it have to be a kingdom? Why
yeah,
can't it be a queendom?" And I was like,
yeah.
okay, so we're doing that kind of feminism.
But then the female narrator essentially goes away and it's just mostly the male one.
She pops back in at one point to say, "You go, girl," and then the guy gets back with, "Don't you mean woman?" Because she had interrupted him before to say woman
Hmm.
instead of girl.
Yeah. Yeah, I could tell what they were going for with that, with the combat between the narrators, but the execution here is kind of wobbly.
Yeah,
It's like, okay, I could see, I guess we might as well address the elephant in the room about the feminism. Obviously, I guess I would term myself as a feminist, but I don't really like how it's portrayed in this.
yeah,
Um,
the combative, angry
it's very
kind.
combative, and it's like I already don't like Rip Van Winkle. You don't need to convince me.
Yeah, actually.
Like, but also I feel like being this combative kind of I guess we'll go into it, but just a general overview, I don't really like this portrayal of feminism. I feel like it does if someone who saw this who wasn't a feminist, I
Hmm.
don't know if it would help convince them to be.
No.
Well,
Um, yeah, that's my point of view on this. Like, I don't think
well,
they do it well.
the part where they literally at the beginning of the entire thing, already someone is like, excuse me, why don't you call it a queendom instead of a kingdom? Like that, I felt like that came off aggressive almost.
That was already a no.
That
Like,
was uncalled for.
yeah, I thought it was going to be like a joke because it end up actually being a queen or something, and then there's not a queen at all or a king.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a monarchy, it was a democratically elected president.
Yeah, like I would have been okay with it if the joke is like there's not a king, there's actually a queen.
Yeah,
So haha. Yeah, it is weird we call it a kingdom still. Fair enough. But like it's just a feminist joke, I guess. So I'm like, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was bizarre. And then I read that this narrator is played by Gloria Steinem, who is like a
Yes.
famous feminist activist. I was like, I didn't even know
Mm.
she acted. I thought she was like just a feminist activist. I
Yeah.
didn't realize
Um,
she was in stuff like this.
yeah, she's like the most famous feminist activist from the 70s.
I see.
Yeah.
Want to get involved, I guess.
Yeah, as soon as I saw her name in the credits, I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like, yeah, I, I could see her seeing this and being like, oh, a feminist take on Rip Van Winkle. I'll be involved in that.
I don't know. Do we want to go story beat by story beat or um and
I mean
do
the
that
we
sound
can, but
good?
the story's just bizarre because you have her meeting Rip and
Yeah.
instantly falling in love with him for some reason. Like I don't know why. He
Love
seems
at
like
first
an
sight.
idiot.
Yeah, he's not my type. I'd just be like, okay.
Yeah,
You
I
don't
don't.
even like the same type of music, but that's apparently why you like him.
I didn't know what she saw in him.
Yeah.
But one of my first notes on him was like he's basically a walking red flag and she marries him anyway.
My notes on this was, who's this dude? Okay,
That-
wait. He's ripped. She's Vanna.
And
Too confusion.
it's so weird because like in the book, like this is not Rip Van Winkle by the book because like in the book,
Oh,
Rip's
definitely
main
not.
fault is that he is extremely helpful and nice to everyone in town, except he does not take care of his own home at all. So
Yeah.
like this is this Rip is extremely selfish and only cares about himself. He doesn't help anybody other than himself. It's just like they took all of the stereotypical, terrible, toxic male traits they could think of and piled them into this character and then just put Rip Van Winkle's name on it. It's like this is barely Rip Van Winkle at all.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're both Rip Van Winkle, apparently.
Yeah, because like the
Yeah.
whole she goes up into the mountains and they've replaced the ghost of Henry Hudson and his men with the ladies or the women of Thunder Mountain.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, I wrote in all caps, all, feminists on Thunder Mountain.
Like why? What is I don't understand what their purpose is. They just go up into the mountain and say feminist things to each other.
I don't know.
I feel bad for anybody who's listening to this who doesn't understand what's going on
No,
because
no, no.
I'm realizing this is so like out of the realm of Rip Van Winkle. So essentially, just an overview here. Vanna is quote unquote hippy dippy lady according to the song, and she's like an actual hippie. She's into
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the guitar kind of music, and then she sees Rip, who is this big buff dude who's more like rock and roll, but she falls in love with him, and they get married and have a kid. And she's lost her voice because he's trying to term it in a not cussing way. He's not very nice, and
He's a selfish narcissist.
yeah, there you go. Clinical way. Also, I wouldn't say he's like malicious. Like he's not trying to abuse her, but he only
He's
cares about
he's just
himself.
an idiot who only thinks
Yeah,
about what he wants and likes and thinks that she doesn't need anything for herself. She just is happy with the way he wants
he's
to
a
be.
neglectful
Yeah.
abuser, I would say.
Yeah.
Not physically or anything, just neglectful
He
and
and
sexist.
he doesn't like care about what she wants.
Yeah, he doesn't care about her. He doesn't care about their kid. He just wants his food. He wants to go home and be catered to. He wants a mama, essentially. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
then she's lost her voice and she goes, I forget why, but she
She's
goes,
visited by this bluebird for some reason.
oh
I don't know
yeah,
what the bluebird was supposed to be because there's no bluebird in the story of Rip Van Winkle. It's just a
yeah, that was
random
random.
bluebird.
Maybe the replacement for his dog. I don't know. Oh yeah, she has like animal friends. She's basically like a Disney princess, but a
Okay,
hippie.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so she goes to Thunder Mountain, and there's feminists there instead of instead of the
That
ghosts.
sentence. She goes to Thunder Mountain and there's feminists there.
Yeah. But
Brand new r slash brand new sentence.
they're wild, wild feminists. Feminists in the
Yeah,
wild.
and they give her her voice back. However, it doesn't last. So she's visited by like it doesn't last when her husband comes home, and she's I guess she makes the connection like, oh, my voice goes away when he's here. So she's very visited by her fairy god mentor,
Mhm.
who gives her a potion, and she kind of like, I can't give this to him, but she does, and it makes him fall asleep for years, like decades. And when he wakes up, it's a feminist world. The world is ruled by women.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess the point is woman power.
That's basically it's not a complicated story. Like,
Yeah, it's okay, it's a feminist fairy tale, like truly in the
mhm.
sense. However, the reason why I don't like it is because I feel like at least maybe I'm not actually a feminist according to some people, but my thing would be equal rights. I don't want
Mhm.
anybody to have more rights than anybody else.
Oh yeah.
So it kind of like really rubs me the wrong way that in this idealistic world of the future, everyone in power is a woman. Like it's
Mhm.
flip-flopped. And I guess the point they're making is, especially at this time that this was made, men were more in charge, and they still are. Though I
Hmm.
would argue it has improved. But that's
Hmm.
not what I want either. I want both people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I want people for different backgrounds. I want different gender orientations. I just want people to be people, just to represent everyone. So I didn't like this one. It wasn't for me. But yeah, girl power, I guess.
And yeah, I think most people like don't want men to like rule all or women to rule all. The point isn't for like women to take over. It's that we want women to have the opportunity to have as much power as men, just like equal rights.
Hmm.
Just like yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
yeah, we don't want to give women special treatment just because they're women.
Like, I think I would have liked this more if this world did have more women, but also men. But the main point not being that it's a because it kind of ends up being this world is run by men now, by women now. That's not the takeaway would want. I'd want it to be that Vanna is she's a boss girl now. Like, screw you, Rip. She's a,
Yeah.
she has her own voice and she's started this empire all by herself without your help, and it's all hers. And now you're her trophy husband because he sucked.
Yeah.
Like, so if it went that way, I would have been fine with it. I just don't like how they did end up going with it. It's like, okay, cool story, bro.
Yeah. I mean,
Or
it
sis,
did
sorry. Cool story,
right,
sis.
right. It did it kind of feel slightly anti-man. Maybe that could be a problem.
That was my problem with it, I guess,
Yeah.
is I'm not against men. And
Yeah.
I hate having to say that because I know there's this whole, not to get political thing, but there is this whole, women being like, I wouldn't call myself a feminist because I don't hate men. And it's like, no, feminism is about equal rights.
Yes.
Uh, so I hate that this is making me say that, but that is
Hmm.
what's really going on here. It does give an anti-men thing here, and I don't like it.
I think the attitude in this special is the reason that people always say that,
Yes.
because this is what people think of, unfortunately, when they think of feminism. This kind
Yeah.
of stereotypical angry, not that this was particularly angry, it was just kind of aggressive. And I think that just rubs people the wrong way. That's why they have to couch that they wouldn't call themselves a feminist because they don't
Yeah.
want to be associated with the attitude presented in this
Which
cartoon.
Which I get that. I get that because like it is a common thing for like the term feminist to be like hijacked by a bunch of different people with different intentions for the word. But it's like
Hmm.
it does sort of frustrate me because like I do think of myself as a feminist in the sense that I do support equal rights for
We're
all
on the same
genders.
page.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm on the same page as you, but yeah, it's frustrating because people do have negative feelings towards that word just because they associate it with people who use it to represent like power for women over men, and so yeah, it is
I want
frustrating.
inclusivity, not exclusivity.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I'm like thinking of anybody who might have seen this and been like, oh, this feminist. I feel like
mm.
this stuff like this drives people more away from feminism than it leads them to it.
ah,
Um,
yeah,
Yeah,
so,
probably.
I hate if this cartoon might have like, lended itself to that. I'm sure it didn't. I'm sure it was just a flash in the pan, nobody cared kind of thing.
yeah.
I
Well,
don't know.
it's such a well-intentioned cartoon, though, too. It's like I know what they're trying to say, but
There
it
is a
just
lot of effort in it. I will also give them that.
Hmm.
Um, it's cool that they invited a women's activist to be a part of it. That's
Well, it
cool.
wasn't just her. Maya Angelou was in this. She was the fairy god mentor.
yeah.
Oh, I didn't
That
look into the cast.
The
Who's
the
that?
women of Thunder Mountain were Linda Ellerbe, Callista Flockhart was Vanna, Betty Friedan, and I'm not sure of the others. There was Jesse Norman and Ann Richards. Those names aren't as familiar to me, but I think they're somebody big in maybe the feminist movement. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's well intentioned. It's cool that they got people involved.
yeah.
I just don't think it helped their cause. So
No, probably not.
yeah,
I,
I'm kind of like, at least from a feminist perspective, for me, this is bad.
I
But,
mean,
from a Rip Van Winkle perspective, it's interesting.
yeah.
Yes. Yes. I think that's the probably the saving grace for me is that I enjoyed the aspect of what they were trying to do with the story of Rip Van Winkle. I don't think they were particularly successful in telling a fun story because I was kind of bored and kind of annoyed by a lot of stuff in it. But it is interesting what they were trying to do with the story of Rip Van Winkle. I just hope that somebody else in the future, because I haven't found any other version that takes Dame Van Winkle's perspective. I would like a version that really looks at her like a straight up adaptation of Rip Van Winkle, but from her perspective,
Yeah,
because I
I
think
know
that
what
would
you're
be so
saying.
interesting.
Yeah.
And I kind of like I'm the kind of person who when I watch things, I don't focus so much on the message or the moral or what they're trying to get me to think. I cared more about how believable are these characters and
How they're telling the story.
how they're
Yeah.
telling the story. And yeah, so
Yeah.
like if I omit the feminist message and just judge this just on its writing quality, it's I didn't think it was bad, but it wasn't like that great either. It was sort of like
It is what it is.
it is what it is. There are things about it actually. There are things about it that I liked though. There were like Callista Flockhart voices Vanna. I thought she did a good job. It was like she wasn't
Oh,
like
she was good. Yeah.
a lot of people when they voice animated characters, they over exaggerate and over and make their voice too cartoony. She sounded like a real like woman, like very
Hmm.
understated performance. And also like the songs, I actually didn't think the songs were bad. That rock and roll song was kind of catchy. Like,
The hippy dippy song actually keeps going through my head, so the songs were catchy.
yeah, the songs
I
were
didn't like the songs, but I can appreciate that they weren't bad. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Yeah, you didn't hate them, but
I
they
didn't
aren't good.
hate them. I
Yeah,
didn't like them, but they were like, I was like, I can appreciate that there's some level of skill. I can
right.
appreciate the quote unquote artistry of it, I guess. I don't,
I mean,
Hmm.
yeah.
to be fair, they aren't the kind of thing that I would put on my Spotify playlist or anything, but
Yeah.
but they were still kind of catchy.
Yeah.
Songs I put on to hate on my husband. Anyway, but it was interesting because someone said something earlier about like, it made me think like, who is this for?
Yeah.
Like, who would watch this?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's like it seems like it's for kids, but it kind of like I
Well, it
think it
seems
well,
like it's for families, I
but
guess.
that's more like what it is. It feels more like it's for families, but
However, I don't think a kid would like this because it's dealing a lot with adult themes. That said, it's never, as far as I thought, it was never like inappropriate. It was
yeah,
still family
Hmm.
friendly the whole time, but it was completely dealing with adult messages that I don't think would interest kids very much.
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's kind of like this is like really for feminist mom
That's what
who
I was
it
just thinking.
yeah, it's for feminist moms who want to watch things with their children. And that's the target audience.
And that's very narrow.
It's
Yeah.
very narrow and very niche. And it's like I can't maybe they were hoping they were gonna get moms like other moms too to watch it. And I'm sure some of them did, but like I know if I was watching this, I'd be like, okay. Yeah, I'd be up to the kid like, if you want to watch it, we can watch it. But secretly, I'd be like, can we not?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up with cable and I had HBO as a kid. This show came across my radar occasionally, and I remember watching a few episodes of these, and they never became like a go-to thing I watched all the time, or it never became my favorite show. It was like it's kind of like the same way I feel watching it now, which is like, okay, that existed and it was fine.
I'm
And
kind of hoping the other ones are more fun.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they must get really creative with them if they're turning Rip Van Winkle into like a hippie story.
I think that's the most positive thing I could say about this is I always bring Alice somewhere into it. But the reason why I like Alice adaptations is that the story is so loose that you could do a fairly faithful adaptation, putting your own spin and your own
Hmm.
theme into it
Mhm.
of what motifs you want and yada yada, what themes. So I appreciate storytellers telling a story their own way. And if
Yeah.
I could say one good thing about this Rip Van Winkle is that they certainly use the story as a vehicle to tell their own, like a new story. And
Hmm.
Oh
I
yeah.
can admire that. So there is the one gold star. Good
Yeah.
job.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they did get a little creative. I mean, with like casting Maya Angelou as the fairy god mentor, that was not anything that had anything to do with the classic story.
Yeah, I mean, there's not even a fairy godmother in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
That was kind of weird to be honest, but whatever
Yeah.
drives the story forward.
The whole Women of Thunder Mountain thing was weird. I did not understand the point of it.
I didn't
Yeah.
understand why, if I have one critique, I didn't understand why she goes to Thunder Mountain to the feminists, gets her voice, and then loses it again. Wouldn't she be empowered after talking with the feminists?
That's yeah, I didn't follow like
Yeah, I'm
a lot of things that happened in this.
like her husband comes home and she loses her voice. Like I know that happens to women. I know maybe that was the point they're trying to make is
I think
it
that's how I took it. Like
yeah.
she was briefly inspired, but then she got home and the reality shut her down again.
Oh, well, yeah, the fact that her voice went away again as soon as she got back to her like husband was kind of like, yeah, that's the message is like, oh, he's silencing her maybe.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I think just from a storytelling perspective, I don't think the fairy god mentor was necessary. I think she could have gotten the juice from the feminists, or whatever
Right.
it was.
Right, right. Well, didn't that fairy god mentor, didn't she become president at the end?
Yeah,
Did she?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she became president. Yeah, it's like anyway, right after Rip Van Winkle said
I
it.
think I started to dissociate. Not gonna lie, I started to dissociate at the end.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you were drifting off towards the end. Yeah.
I was. I really when I can't. I've already expressed how much I didn't like the ending, so I was starting to be like dissociating. Like, what am I watching?
I don't blame anyone for that.
Yeah,
Like I get it. Like
and it went on for quite a while too. Actually, like I thought it'd be like, okay, we made you got the point. All right, is it done? No, okay, we're still gonna get going.
yeah.
All
The
right.
the whole end was like for most of the episode, it just felt like a whole lot of stereotypes.
Yeah,
And then by the end, it felt like they decided to switch all the stereotypes. So like you have the paper girl and you have like
Oh
the
yeah.
guys were the secretaries. It was just like you've just traded one stereotype for another stereotype. It just felt lazy, I guess.
Yeah.
again, it's kind of the exclusionary feminism.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm also like, it went on for way too long too. Like, we don't need the
Right.
paper girl. We don't need all
Yeah.
this.
The
They were
paper girl who dramatically removes her hat to reveal her long hair, therefore
yeah,
she is a girl.
they really milked
Gotta
that.
gotta exclude the little boys.
They really
They should be home playing with their toy cars.
I like how they milked that moment when she like her hair came down in long slow motion almost when she revealed herself and it's like a paper girl. Like
What?
One of my notes was like, some of this felt like it was written by someone wanting to make fun of feminists.
Yeah,
oh
that's my thing about this. It feels almost more like making fun of them.
yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying when it seems so poorly executed.
Yeah, the messaging was all over the place, just kind of muddy. It was like they were not clear in what they were trying to do for parts of it, and then the parts where it was clear, it just felt like a parody almost.
I also think some like a lot of the pacing was kind of odd. Like there was a lot of time in the beginning where it was just like, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Because it was very confusing.
Yeah.
But then again, that was me expecting the story of Rip Van Winkle and just
Yeah.
getting confusion
Yeah.
Right.
until I realized, oh, they're both Rip Van Winkle. And then the end was just went on and on. And then I would say that, you know what? I think this would have been a lot stronger if it was shorter, I guess.
And
Uh,
and
Um,
it already was just over 20 minutes, so it was pretty short.
yeah, that's the ironic thing. And like it could be shorter. You guys, I don't know. It was a
yeah.
drag, to be honest.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it is crazy how it was like it was less than half an hour, but it still felt like they were like trying to pad it to like make it like longer than it needed to be. So I could see what you're saying.
I do kind of wonder if some of the production crew were kind of doing lip service and they weren't really feminist, like
I
concerned about the message. They're just kind of like, this is what the boss wants.
I mean, it's very possible. I mean, it after all, like it is a job to these people.
Yeah. So I don't know. I kind of wonder if it's also not a good story because like not everybody was on board. It was just kind of like, okay, here's a stereotype and we just flip it. Then here's another stereotype. We just flip it.
Yeah.
It just feels
Yeah.
like lazy writing.
Well, I don't know who the showrunner for this was, but this, I feel like they're probably the blame for this.
Everyone here is to blame.
I mean, I mean, well, there are some people on in the crew with who have good like resumes. Like this was directed by Anthony Bell. He was like a storyboard artist for The Simpsons, and he directed some episodes of Rugrats, and Rugrats was a good
Not
show.
everything could be a winner.
Yeah, I know exactly.
I am curious though if they genuinely thought that they were doing a good job with this one.
That is a good question though. Even it came out in the 90s, and so like I don't have, and I was a kid back then. I don't know what people's political
Me too.
attitudes were. So I don't know if they thought this was lame back then or if they thought this was like the greatest thing they ever made. I don't know.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have no idea. It
Hmm.
to us and in 2024, it just seems kind of lame for
Yeah.
lack of a better word. They just
I
didn't do
mean,
a good job getting the message in there.
It's weird because a lot of the problems it's talking about are still problems we're dealing with. However, I feel like it aged really badly. Um,
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like women's rights has evolved a bit more, like the
Yeah.
fight for it to be more inclusionary. So I don't know if it was like this back then. I wasn't alive. I was alive in the 90s, but I mean like obviously these activists were evolved earlier. I don't know if this was the vibe back then, but I feel like the fight has evolved and I think it's aged badly.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Gloria Steinem and Maya Angelou both agreed to participate in this makes me think that at the time maybe it seemed like a good idea, but it
That
just
They
seems
is
it
must have
just
thought it was
true.
awesome. I don't
That is
know.
true. That is a good point.
yeah, which I just think that maybe it's our political ideas and our ideas of feminism over time just sort of evolved and our minds sort of got a little bit more sophisticated about it, which has happened for a lot of stuff over time. Like when we
Like
think
to be
about
fair,
yeah,
I know I'm riding off the coast of the successes they've made. So, maybe at this time this was a good attitude to have. I don't know. I wasn't alive then.
yeah.
Yeah, but it aged badly. I don't recommend this to watch this one unless you're curious. Unless you're a
Yeah.
Brit Van Winkle fan, you gotta see them all. Um,
Yeah.
those are the only two reasons I would suggest this.
That
Yeah.
is my main, I guess,
That is why we're
recommendation.
here.
Like if you are interested in finding all the versions of Rip Van Winkle, this is interesting from that perspective. But from just a random thing to watch, meh, I don't recommend it.
No.
Also, if you are a Rip Van Winkle completionist, I would be interested to talk to you. Um,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
because I think it'd be a unique story to have that kind of passion for. But
Yeah.
also, I want to know where this ranks in your list.
Right. Right.
For
Uh,
me, I would say it's at the bottom of my list of the few
Yeah,
that
it's the
I've
bottom of my
watched so
list, but I'm
far.
not a Rip Van Winkle passionate fan, so I don't. I'm curious.
yeah. Well, this is really different from the original story, so it's also hard to rank.
Yeah, that's true. Rip Van Winkle is barely Rip Van Winkle. His wife is more Rip Van Winkle than he is. He just does the sleeping. That's his only.
Well, that's what I mean. Like they're both Rip Van Winkle.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah,
I mean his name is Rip, her name is Vanna. It's supposed to be like the van part.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like splitting them apart and then making them against each other. Very odd. But at the same time, she doesn't hate him.
That is true.
Yeah.
Yeah. They did a good job not making him seem like completely like un,
That's
un like
that's what
he
I meant
wasn't
by
evil.
it. Like he's not malicious.
Yeah, exactly. He's not evil. He's just not bright. He's just dumb.
Just an idiot, and I wouldn't want to be around him, but I wouldn't.
Like he's not going women
Yeah,
bad.
yeah. I wouldn't
Like
go out of my way to
no.
hate him, but I just wouldn't want to be around him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, if anything else, it gave us a very interesting discussion.
Yes.
Yeah. That's not nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the reason that I like doing these.
Yeah.
For the worst versions of things always seem to have the most interesting discussions.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true, actually. Yeah, it
I
definitely
mean,
makes you talk.
it's more enjoyable than actually watching the thing.
I
And
yes, I've said that about other things too. I enjoy making the podcast more than I did actually watching the thing.
oh yeah, all the time. Yes.
Well, I think we've probably exhausted this particular Rip Van Winkle well.
Yeah.
You mean we drained the feminist Rip Van Winkle to dead? It's gone.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, there's not much else to say. I'm pretty sure we covered it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. That was
Yes.
interesting.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
for joining me. I'm glad we watched it. I'm glad we had this discussion, even if
Yeah.
it wasn't that fun of a thing to watch.
I am actually kind of glad I watched it. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that will be all for this episode. We will be back in the future to talk about another animated version, one that is also bizarre, but I liked it a lot more than this one. So until then, do you guys want to let people know where they can find you if they would like more from you, Eli?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at eJunkie2014, and I also have a blog where I write things that are longer than tweets, and that blog is Entertainment Junkie Blog, and you can find me on the website ejunkiblog.com.
Okay, and Jenna?
Yes. If you like me for Alice stuff, you can find me on Still She Haunts Me Phantomwise on YouTube. If you like other things I might be interested in, I have The Love Gift of a Fairy Tale also on YouTube.
Okay, well, we will see you in the future for more Rip Van Winkle.
See you later.
Thanks for listening to Every Version Ever. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and follow my co-hosts as well. My link tree and all of our links will be in the description below. If you want more of my content, all my podcasts are available on YouTube as well as most podcast platforms. If you enjoyed this show, check out one of the other podcasts or check out my Patreon for bonus and extended episodes you won't find anywhere else. We'll be back soon with another brand new episode, so thanks for listening and we'll see you next time.